All right, so we're going to get started with making our armature for our bust. I've got my character design here, and here's an example of one that I demoed in class. So we're going to make something similar to that. I've got another one here that I did a little bit different technique for the neck here. I wrapped some smaller wire around there to stabilize the neck. All right, so I've got my armature wire here, and I'm going to start measuring down from the top of the head. And it's a good idea to use some type of instrument to measure your character's head. So I'm going to align it with the top of the head and the chin, but I want the armature to sit inside that a good way. So about a 1/4 inch of clay that will go around. So it's going to be similar in size to this one right here that I've made previously. All right, so I'm going to start bending the wire. I want to make sure I'm centered here, and I'm going to start looping around here for one side and creating the neck. And now I want to start pulling in the other side to mirror that. So I'm just making some subtle adjustments here, and it's still pretty wide. I'm going to have to reduce the size. And you can see it's still too wide there. I want to have enough room for not only the aluminum foil, but enough room that I can add the clay on without running into the armature. So I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller here, and that's feeling about right. Okay, so again, I'm just about at the same size as the one I made in class. Okay, so now I'm going to twist the area for the neck. I'm just going to do this with my hands. I'm pinching off the one area pretty tight. So I've got my first loop right there. And I want to try to make these as tight as I can. So I want to have like a really nice snug fit here. That's going to create an armature that is rigid and it will support the weight of the clay up on the head. So I've got a character with a large head and a skinny neck. So those always are troublesome when you're trying to build an armature. You want to make sure you've got a nice uh, neck that's twisted tightly so it can support the weight. So I'm going to twist it all the way down to the base and just making some adjustments there. And that's about the right length. So I've got just enough here on the end now where I can loop these around, and then I'll have a way to fasten it down with the screws onto the wood base. So using my needle nose pliers, I'm going to grab the tip of this and I'm going to begin turning it. So I'm getting it to wrap around the tip of that needle nose plier, and then I'm curling it under. And then I want to flatten it out so that will lay flat against the wood base. Okay, so I've got one there, and this side's a little bit longer, so I'm going to just trim a little off. And I probably took a little too much off there, but we'll make some adjustments here, and it should be fine. She's got a fairly narrow shoulder. All right, so I'm just kind of pinching that down there. And all right, so I think that will fit inside there nicely. I've got enough room for the armature to fit inside the clay area. All right, so I've got my base here, and I'm just noting here the thickness of it. I'm actually going to get my gauge here and just show you how thick this is. So it's 0.7, a little under an inch, and that will allow enough space for these wood screws to go into the base without coming through the bottom. All right, so I'm just showing the depth there. Okay. All right, so I'm going to center this on here, and I'm actually going to turn this around. I'm going to put that little wood knot on the back side. All right, so I'm going to just use the tip of my screwdriver here and just mark an area. And I'm just Starting the area now here where the screw is going to go in. This makes it a little bit easier. Okay, and I'm just going to push this one just a little bit more. All right, so I've got those ready, and I'm going to get this on here. And I'm used to a magnetic screwdriver, so I dropped that there. So I'm just going to use my finger to hold it. And I'm going to put it in at a angle here. You can go straight down with it. I'm just, doing this at an angle so you guys can see it a little bit better. And it might take a minute for it to grab onto the wood, but you should feel it catch. And then you want to screw it down until it's nice and firm in there, but you don't want to completely mash the armature wire, which it can do. All right, so just starting the second one, just lining that up a little bit better. And pushing this in there. It takes a little bit of force. And I'm almost starting a new hole here. It didn't quite line up just based on how the first one went in. It kind of pulled it over a little bit. All right, so it grabbed on there and I've got that in, and you can see that the wire's coming out just a little bit. So I'm just backing out the screw a little bit, and then I'm going to take the needle nose pliers and just push that wire back in under there. I don't want it sneaking out and then coming loose while I'm working on it. I want to make sure everything's nice and snug in here. Okay, so I've got that in there, and see it's nice and firm now. It's not moving around. You don't want it flopping around. You want to make sure that it's nice and rigid and solid in the base there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is start adding the aluminum foil and build this up. So this serves two purposes. One, it's going to offset the weight of the clay and the amount that you're using, but it also conducts heat nicely when it's in the oven. And this is baking, and it will help to bake it evenly. So it's not just baking from the outside in, it's also picking up that heat from the inside with the aluminum. So I'm really pushing down tight here. I want to make this as firm as possible. I don't want any of the aluminum to have pockets of air that I run into while I'm sculpting. I want to make sure that it's nice and firm as well. And I'm just tearing off a smaller sheet here, and I'm wrapping that around, folding it in, and really pressing that in there so it doesn't have any pockets of air or loose areas. Okay, so I did push it down the neck, and I probably made that a little bit too thick. I'm just looking at it here from the side. So yes, it is a little too thick for the drawing. So I'm just going to peel some of this back. It's good if you have scissors to just clip it. I'm kind of twisting it off with my fingers here. And then I'm just going to push this up here into the head area. All right, so we can see that that's it's starting to bulk out a little bit. I can probably go ahead and build up a little bit more here. Okay, so I'm just tearing that again. And I'm building up the back side. So the back side of her head is going to have more of the buildup with the aluminum foil than the front. So at the front, I usually like to be able to create eye sockets for the eyes, and I want to be able to dig out those eye sockets and not run into the armature. This gives you the idea of how to build that up, and go ahead and get started with your own armature.